Case 1. Angelina Bini. People in Queens, New York learned her name after a series of very sad and frightening events in 2019. Federal records described her as a woman who met clients through sex work contacts across the city. During July and August that year, several men were found unresponsive inside small motel rooms shortly after meeting with her. These discoveries worried many people in the community because the men had been healthy and going about their normal lives before the meetings. But after seeing Bini, they were found with no signs of life. Each case showed a pattern that made investigators pay close attention. Very powerful drugs had been used, and the victims were left without any chance to survive, even when emergency workers tried to help them. As investigators looked closely at the cases, they learned that some of the men had been given fentanyl. Another victim, a chef named Andrea Zamperoni, was given a liquid chemical called GBL. When GBL enters the body, it can act like a dangerous drug and can cause a person to pass out or stop breathing. Zamperoni's death shocked many people around the world because he worked at a famous restaurant and was found inside a motel room under very troubling conditions. His body had been wrapped in sheets and placed inside a garbage bin, and there were cleaning chemicals around him. 3 other men also died during the same period. Every time investigators uncovered more information like text messages, motel sign-in logs, security video, and drug test results, the path led back to Bini's meetings with the victims. As the investigation continued, the evidence against Bini became stronger and more organized. She was eventually charged in federal court with distributing fentanyl and committing crimes connected to the overdose deaths. In August 2021, she chose to plead guilty. After many months of legal steps and court hearings, her case reached its final decision. On April 26, 2022, a federal judge in Brooklyn sentenced her to 30 years in prison. Case 2. Alix Tichelman was known across the United States after something very sad happened in Santa Cruz, California, in November 2013. She worked as a call girl and a model, meeting wealthy clients in private places where they paid her for her time. One of these clients was Forrest Hayes, a well-known tech executive who had worked at companies like Google. On the night of the event, Alix went onto his yacht, a large boat where he sometimes met people. The two spent time together inside the cabin, talking, sitting close, and preparing drugs. The yacht had cameras inside, so every moment was recorded clearly from start to finish. The video from the yacht became the most important part of the case. It showed Hayes slowly losing control of his body after Alix injected him with heroin. In the recording, he began to slump, and it was clear that he needed help. Instead of calling for emergency services or trying to save him, Alix packed her things, looked around the boat, and walked out, leaving Hayes alone. Police later said that Hayes might have survived if someone had called for help quickly. Many people were surprised and confused when they saw how she left, because most people expect someone to call for help in an emergency. The video made the case very serious because it showed everything that happened without guesswork. Alix was arrested in 2014 after investigators identified her as the woman seen in the video. Officers matched her appearance, her movements, and her past connections to Hayes. When the case went to court, she did not deny that she had been on the yacht that night. Instead, she agreed to take responsibility. In May 2015, she pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and to giving drugs to another person. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in prison. Alix Tichelman was released from jail on March 29, 2017. She served approximately 3 years of her 6-year sentence, receiving credit for time served before her plea deal and for good behavior. Immediately, she was released from jail. She was taken into custody by the Department of Homeland Security Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents for deportation proceedings, and she was officially deported to Canada a little over a week later, around April 7, 2017. Before we move on to the next case, please support my channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. This would help the algorithm recommend the video to more true crime lovers on YouTube. Thank you very much. Case 3. Leniyah Butler's case became well known in San Francisco after a deadly shooting on November 12, 2023. Many reports from local news and federal investigators described her as a transgender sex worker who met clients in different areas of the city. Her everyday life was filled with difficult moments. She often struggled to find safe places to stay, worried about her personal safety, and spent long hours trying to earn enough money to get through each day. She met many strangers, made quick choices, and moved from place to place because she felt she had no stable support. These challenges shaped her life for years and created a path that led to the serious event that placed her at the center of a major federal case. On the night of the shooting, Leniyah met a client in the Presidio area, close to Crissy Field East Beach, a quiet location near the water. What began as a meeting between two adults soon turned into a strong disagreement. According to prosecutors, the client became upset after the two had a sexual encounter and asked for a refund. Their argument grew more tense with each moment, and both sides felt frustrated. During this heated exchange, Leniyah took out a gun and shot the man while the two were still inside his vehicle. After the shooting, she drove away in the victim's car, trying to hide what had happened. She took the car to another neighborhood and attempted to clean away fingerprints and other signs that connected her to the scene. When investigators later found the car, the evidence helped them understand what had occurred. These details formed the main points of the case built by federal officers. In 2025, after a long and detailed trial in federal court, a jury found Leniyah Butler guilty of voluntary manslaughter and several firearm offenses. She was not found guilty of second-degree murder, but the jury decided that the shooting could not be treated as full self-defense. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge sentenced her to 5 years in federal prison, with supervised release to follow after she completes her sentence. Case 4. Shelley Stark. Everything began in Spokane, Washington, on December 9, 2007. On that day, police officers were called to the house she shared with her husband, Dale Stark. When they went inside, they found Dale lying on the floor with a gunshot wound. Shelley told the officers that she shot him because she believed she was in danger and needed to protect herself. At first, it looked like a case where two people who lived together had a fight that ended in a very sad way. They had been together for many years, and the first story made it seem like fear and panic were at the center of the moment. But as the police continued to study the home and gather information, things began to look different. Officers searched for messages, phone records, and travel plans to understand what happened before the shooting. Local news also talked about Shelley's past, describing how she had once been involved in sex work. This part of her past became part of the larger story because the investigation showed that many things in her life were complicated. Soon, detectives learned that Shelley had a boyfriend named Brian Moore who lived in California. Police said the two stayed in contact through emails and calls, and that they seemed to be planning something before Dale lost his life. Investigators carefully looked at the messages and other documents they found. They said these records showed planning, travel choices, and steps taken before the shooting happened. They also said some things Shelley told them did not match the physical evidence inside the house. These differences made detectives believe that the act was not sudden. During the trial, prosecutors said Shelley and Moore had prepared a plan so they could benefit financially after Dale's death. Her defense team, however, argued that she had felt alone, scared, and unsafe, and that she acted because she truly believed she needed to protect herself. In 2009, the case reached its first big result. A jury listened to all the evidence and found Shelley guilty of first-degree murder. The judge decided she would serve 610 months in prison. After this, Shelley's lawyers said there were serious problems with how the first trial was handled, so they took the case to a higher court. In 2010, the Washington Court of Appeals agreed that there had been issues and ruled that she should receive a new trial. When she was tried again, another jury also found her guilty of first-degree murder. However, the extra conspiracy charge from the first trial did not continue into the second one. After the new ruling, she was sentenced to a nearly 42-year prison term. Case 5. Toni Jo Henry's life was very difficult long before people in Louisiana and Texas learned her name. She was born in 1916 with the name Annie Beatrice McQuiston. As she grew older, she did not have a safe or happy home, so she tried to survive in any way she could. She began working on the streets, hoping each day would help her stay alive. Later, she spent time in a brothel in Shreveport's red light area. Her days were filled with worry, and she did whatever she could just to get through each week. Life seemed heavy for her, But everything changed when she met a man named Claude "Cowboy" Henry. She cared about him deeply, even though he was already in a Texas prison. After they got married, she wanted to help him, no matter how risky it was. From that moment, her choices became bigger, faster, and much more dangerous. On February 14, 1940, Toni Jo joined a man named Harold "Archie" Burks. Their goal was to help her husband escape from the Texas prison where he was locked up. While traveling on the road, they met a man named Joseph P. Calloway, who was simply driving his car to visit his family. Toni Jo and Burks pointed a gun at him, took his money, placed him in the trunk of his own car, and drove to a quiet place. On that quiet road, Calloway was shot and lost his life. That moment changed everything for Toni Jo. What happened became known across the state very quickly, and people began following the case with great interest. Newspapers wrote about it again and again, and many people wanted to know what would happen to her. The trials that followed lasted for years. Toni Jo stood before the court 3 separate times between 1940 and 1942. Each time, the court found her guilty of first-degree murder. She asked for another chance, hoping the decision might change, but every request was denied. On November 28, 1942, she was executed in the electric chair. She became the only woman in Louisiana to face this form of punishment. If you found this video interesting so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. This would help the algorithm push the video to reach more people on YouTube. Thanks for your support. Case 6. Karla Faye Tucker's life changed in a very sad way in Houston, Texas, in 1983. She did not grow up in a calm or safe home. Many reports explain that when she was still very young, she began using strong drugs and doing sex work because of the people around her. She spent most of her time with older friends who also used drugs, and this made her life even harder. Each day was filled with choices that pushed her further away from safety. She moved from place to place, stayed out very late, and followed people who were making the same harmful decisions she was making. By June 1983, her life was moving very fast, and she found it hard to stop or change direction. These choices slowly brought her to a night that would affect many people and change her life forever. On June 13, 1983, Karla Faye Tucker and her friend Danny Garrett went into the home of a man named Jerry Lynn Dean. They planned to take motorcycle parts from his home. They did not expect anyone to be there, but inside they found Dean and a woman named Deborah Thornton. Deborah had arrived earlier and had nothing to do with the plan Karla and her friend had made. A fight broke out inside the home and things became very violent. Both Dean and Thornton were killed with a pickaxe. The news shocked the city of Houston. Families, police, and community members were deeply troubled by what had happened. When officers found Karla and asked her questions, the things she said showed how badly drugs had affected her mind and actions. The case quickly became one of the most serious in the area, and many people wanted to understand how the events had happened. In 1984, a jury in Texas found Karla Faye Tucker guilty of capital murder. The court decided she would receive the death penalty. This began a long legal process that continued for many years. During this time, many people learned about her story because she spoke openly about her past, her drug use, and the choices she regretted. Some people agreed with her punishment, while others believed she had changed and asked the state to spare her life. After many appeals were looked at and denied, Texas carried out the sentence on February 3, 1998. Her death marked a major moment in the state's history because she became the first woman executed in Texas in the modern era. Case 7. Zoey Bumgarden. People in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, first heard her name after Sean Coury died in 2020. Local news said she was a former prostitute who spent time around people who used and shared drugs. The case began when Coury was found on the floor of a hotel room in Sulphur, unable to wake up. When police arrived, they learned that he had taken drugs that came from a small group connected to Zoey and a teenage boy. From that moment, officers knew they had to look closely at every detail to understand how everything happened. As the days passed, the case became clearer. Tests showed that Coury had died because of fentanyl. Police followed the path of the drugs, trying to see who had handled them, who had passed them along, and who had given them to Coury. Their search led back to Zoey and the teenage boy who had been with her that night. Reports showed that Corey was given the drugs during a plan to take items from him while he was unable to protect himself. What started as a plan to steal quickly turned into a deadly situation. Officers looked through text messages, checked hotel cameras, and spoke to people who knew what happened. With each step, they learned more about Zoey's actions, and the full story slowly came together. When the case reached court, everything changed through a plea agreement. In March 2024, Zoey Bumgarden pleaded guilty to manslaughter and drug distribution charges linked to Corey's death. This meant she admitted her part in the events that led to the tragedy. The judge sentenced her to 5.5 years in prison, but she had already spent almost 3 years in jail waiting for her case to finish. Because of that, much of her sentence was counted as time already served. She also received a 10-year suspended sentence on the drug charge. After leaving jail, she would spend 3 years on probation, staying under supervision and following strict conditions. Case 8. Brooke Marie Rodier's name was infamous across California in the early 1990s after a very serious crime in Riverside County. Reports at the time described her as an ex-prostitute who had been trying to find a stable place in life while moving from one area to another. She faced many hard moments and often stayed around people who were also struggling with money, housing, and daily survival. Life was not easy for her, and she made choices that were shaped by fear, stress, and the people around her. But everything changed when police said she helped take part in a robbery plan. This plan did not go the way anyone expected, and it ended with a double murder that shocked many families and made headlines across the state. According to court records and CBS News, Brooke Marie Rodier was involved in a robbery that led to the deaths of 2 young men named Marvin Gabriel, who was 22, and Milton Chavez, who was 28. Both men were brought to a motel in the Riverside, Corona area, where they were tied up and robbed. The situation became violent, and both men lost their lives during the attack. When news reporters learned what had happened, the story spread quickly. Newspapers, TV stations, and local communities paid close attention, trying to understand how someone with a difficult past became part of such a deadly plan. Many people were shocked by how carefully the robbery was arranged and how the men were held against their will. Families of the victims were left with deep sadness that still affects them today. The trial received even more attention because the charges were extremely serious. Prosecutors told the court that Rodier was responsible for 2 murders that happened during a robbery, which is considered a special circumstance under California law. This made the case much more severe, and it meant that the punishment could be the highest level allowed by the state. After listening to all the evidence, the jury found her guilty on both counts. The judge agreed with the jury's decision and gave her the death penalty. This made her one of the few women in California to receive this sentence. Till today, Brooke Marie Rodier is on death row in California. Case 9. Brittney Hullberg's name has been known for many years because of a case that began in 1996 in Amarillo, Texas. She was found guilty of the capital murder of an 80-year-old man named A.B. Towery, and she was sentenced to death. For more than 20 years, she lived on death row while her lawyers continued to fight her conviction. In March 2025, her case changed in a major way when a federal court overturned the conviction because important information had been kept from her defense team. This decision brought her case back into the public eye and raised many questions about fairness, honesty, and the rules that must be followed in a courtroom. On November 13, 1996, police officers went to Towery's home and found the house in complete disorder. They also found Towery's body with many injuries from different objects and signs that he had been strangled. These injuries showed that the attack had been very violent. At the time, Brittney Hullberg was struggling with drug use and had known Towery before because he had been a client during her work as an escort. Police began looking into her actions that day, and she soon became the main suspect. Officers took her into custody, and 2 years later, in 1998, she went to trial for capital murder. During the trial, prosecutors told the jury that Hullberg went to Towery's home to steal his money and belongings. A medical examiner explained the injuries in detail, describing cuts, blunt injuries, and signs of strangulation. Hullberg's defense team did not deny that her life had been difficult. They spoke about her traumatic childhood, her addiction, and the abuse she had experienced over the years. But the part of the trial that made the strongest impact came from a woman named Vicki Marie Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick was a jailhouse informant who told the jury that Hullberg had confessed to the killing while they were both in jail. The jury believed this testimony, found Hullberg guilty of capital murder, and sentenced her to death. For more than 20 years, Hullberg's lawyers argued that the trial had not been fair. In March 2025, the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with them. The court discovered that Kirkpatrick, the key witness, had been a paid informant for law enforcement. This fact had never been shared with the defense, even though the law requires that all helpful or important information must be shared before trial. Because the jury did not know this, the court ruled that the conviction could not be trusted. The judges threw out the conviction and the death sentence. Hullberg is still in custody today, while Texas decides whether to hold a new trial or challenge the ruling. Case 10. Dalia Dippolito became known across Florida and even other parts of the country because of something very surprising that happened in 2009. News stories, including reports from the Associated Press, described her as a former escort who had recently married a man named Michael Dippolito. To the people who lived near them in Boynton Beach, the couple looked like any other pair of newlyweds starting fresh. Their home looked peaceful, and nothing seemed out of place. But while everything looked calm on the outside, something very different was happening behind closed doors. Dalia was secretly planning to get rid of her husband, and no one around them had any idea. Dalia began meeting with a man she thought could help her. She believed he was someone who could carry out her plan and make sure her husband never returned home. But she did not know that the man she was talking to was actually an undercover police officer. He was pretending to be a hitman so that officers could learn what she really wanted. Every time Dalia met with him, their conversations were recorded on video and audio. In these recordings, she explained exactly what she hoped he would do, when she wanted it done, and how she planned to pay for it all. These recordings did not stay hidden. They were later shown on television programs like Cops and 2020, making the case famous. People watching at home were shocked to see someone speaking so calmly about such a serious plan. Before anything bad could happen, the police decided to take action. They protected Michael by quietly removing him from the home without telling Dalia. Then they prepared the house to look like something terrible had already happened. When Dalia arrived, an officer told her that her husband had been killed. Cameras filmed her crying and covering her face. Minutes later, detectives took her to another room and revealed the truth. Michael was alive. The hitman was a police officer. Every meeting and every word she had said was recorded. Her reaction became one of the most well-known moments of the case. After this, Dalia was arrested and charged with asking someone to commit first-degree murder. Her case went through many years of trials. She was first convicted in 2011, but that conviction was later overturned. In 2016, a second trial ended with no final decision. But in 2017, during her third trial, she was found guilty again. This time, she was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Case 11. Aileen Wuornos' name became known across Florida following severe events that occurred between 1989 and 1990. She walked along long roads and near truck stops, meeting men who stopped their cars to talk to her while she was doing sex work. These roads were often quiet, and many cars passed by without slowing down. The men who did stop usually talked to her for a short time before driving away with her. Later, several of these men were found dead, far from busy places. Over time, 7 men were linked to her, and each man had been shot with a small handgun after meeting her on the road. As more cases appeared, officers noticed that many details looked the same. Each victim was a man who had been driving alone. Some cars were left behind on the side of the road. Others were found in different towns. These details made officers think that one person might be responsible. Aileen later told police that she shot the men because she felt scared. She said some of them tried to hurt her or force her into something she did not want, but her story changed at different times, which made many people unsure about what truly happened during each meeting. In some moments, she said she acted to protect herself, while in other moments, she suggested she wanted to stop the men from talking. These changes made it hard for people to understand her real reasons. Aileen was arrested on January 9, 1991. Police used evidence from different scenes to connect her to the killings. This evidence included fingerprints and a palm print found inside one victim's car. Officers also got help from Aileen's former partner, who agreed to speak with them and helped point them toward Aileen. While being recorded, Aileen admitted to several killings. Her first trial was for the death of Richard Mallory, and she was found guilty of first-degree murder in 1992. After that, she chose not to fight several more charges and accepted the court's decisions. In the end, she was convicted of 6 murders, even though she had talked about 7. Aileen received 6 death sentences. She stayed on Florida's death row for about 10 years. On October 9, 2002, she was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. Reports say she did not choose a special last meal and only had a cup of coffee. Case 12. Milan Walker. Many people on the Gold Coast came to know her name after a robbery plan she helped create ended with the death of a man named Gregory John Hudson. News reports explained that Walker was working as a prostitute at the time. She often met clients in private places and usually worked alone. In 2016, she became involved in a plan that was supposed to help her and 2 men steal money from Hudson. What started as a plan to take valuables quickly grew into a very serious situation that changed several lives forever. The plan was simple at first. Walker was supposed to meet with Hudson and distract him so the 2 men she knew could enter the home without him noticing. Prosecutors later said she used kinky sex as a way to hold Hudson's attention and keep him from noticing anything happening around him. While she was with him, the other 2 men came inside the home quietly. Their goal was to take money and anything valuable they could find. But once they were inside, the robbery did not go smoothly. A struggle broke out, and Hudson was held down. During the fight, Hudson became unresponsive and could not be saved. Later reports showed that Hudson had very high levels of cocaine in his body and also had heart problems. These health issues made him much weaker and more vulnerable to harm during the attack. Even though his health played a part, the court explained that the robbery plan and the violence inside the home were important reasons for his death. As investigators studied the case, they looked at phone messages, the movements of everyone involved, and the statements made to the police. All of these pieces of information showed that Walker played an important role in setting up the meeting and helping the 2 men enter the home. When the evidence became too strong to ignore, Walker decided to plead guilty to manslaughter. Prosecutors told the court that even though she did not physically attack Hudson, she helped create the situation that allowed the crime to happen. In September 2017, a judge reviewed the full story, including Hudson's health problems and the actions of the people involved. Walker was sentenced to 5 years and 9 months in prison. The 2 men who entered the home also faced charges for their part in the crime. Case 13. Tatjana Edwards' case became one of the most talked-about marriage and murder stories in the United Kingdom during the mid-2000s. She was born in Estonia and later moved to London to look for work and a better future. In London, she worked in a massage parlor, and news reports from The Guardian say she was described in court as a former prostitute. It was in this massage parlor that she first met a much older man named Gwyn Edwards. He was 72 years old, a retired engineer, and someone who had lived a quiet life. Gwyn visited the parlor as a client, but over time, their conversations grew into something more. Gwyn grew fond of her quickly and believed he could help her build a happier and more comfortable life. They later married, and she took his last name, becoming Tatjana Edwards. But even though their relationship looked calm from the outside, trouble was slowly growing inside their home. As time passed, their private life became filled with arguments and stress. Prosecutors later explained that Tatjana believed Gwyn was very rich and could give her the lifestyle she wanted. She asked him for money many times, especially for the cosmetic surgery she hoped to get. Court evidence included notebooks she kept, where she wrote down complaints about their home, about the way Gwyn lived, and about things she felt she deserved. These notes made it clear that she was unhappy and wanted more than what Gwyn could give her. By June 2005, the pressure inside their home reached a breaking point. On a day that month, during yet another argument, Tatjana picked up a knife and stabbed Gwyn in the stomach. He fell to the ground, badly hurt, and sadly did not survive. Police officers arrived and quickly noticed there were no signs of anyone else entering the house. There were no broken locks, no forced entry, and nothing that pointed to another attacker. This made the police suspect Tatjana almost immediately, and she was taken into custody. Her trial took place at Southwark Crown Court in March 2006. prosecutors told the jury that Tatjana had married Gwyn for money and had attacked him after becoming frustrated and angry when her wishes weren't met. Her lawyers argued she loved Gwyn and that the stabbing was an accident that happened during a painful and embarrassing argument. But after listening to all the evidence, including her written complaints and the history of their money problems, the jury decided she was guilty of murder. Reporting from The Guardian confirmed that Tatjana Edwards received a life sentence, which is the usual punishment for murder in the United Kingdom. Case 14. Sheila Clark became widely known across Wales, Ireland, and Northern Ireland after a major police investigation uncovered a hidden prostitution network. She was born in South Africa and once worked as a prostitute herself. As time passed, she stopped working in the trade and began helping to organize it instead. According to reports from The Independent, she helped run a very large operation from Wales that connected to many towns across Ireland and Northern Ireland. Homes that looked normal on the outside were actually closed brothels, quietly used for business while staying hidden from the public. The size of the network surprised police officers, and the case grew into one of the biggest and most talked about cases of its kind in the region. The next part of the story explains why so many people reacted strongly when details became public. Police learned that many of the women working inside the network came from Nigeria and South America. Some were adults trying to earn money, but others were very young, with reports showing girls as young as 15. News outlets, including The Guardian, shared information about how some of the women were frightened into obeying orders. They were told stories meant to scare them, pressured with threats, and warned about punishment if they refused to follow instructions. Many of the women were moved from town to town, watched closely, and told that they owed large debts they had to repay. Money from the business moved across many countries, and the family running the network used different methods to hide the money from police. This continued quietly for years until a long and careful investigation finally revealed the full operation. When the case reached Cardiff Crown Court in February 2010, the details shocked people across the UK and Ireland. Prosecutors charged Sheila Clark with conspiracy to control prostitution for gain and conspiracy to launder money. Evidence showed she worked closely with her husband, Thomas Carroll, who played a major part in running the operation. After the court listened to all the facts, Sheila Clark was found guilty and sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. Her husband received 7 years, and their daughter was also given a prison sentence for helping to move and hide the money connected to the business. Case 15. Ruth Ellis is remembered all across the United Kingdom because she became the last woman to be executed in the country. She was born in Wales in 1926 and later moved to London as a young woman. In London, she worked as a nightclub hostess, greeting customers, serving drinks, and trying to earn enough money to care for herself and her children. Many reports also say she worked in escort settings around the busy West End. Her life during these years was very hard. She often worked late at night, faced stressful relationships, and struggled to keep her family safe and supported. By the mid-1950s, she became involved with a racing driver named David Blakely, and their relationship was full of arguments and emotional pain. These problems slowly led both of them toward a moment that would change British history. On the 10th of April 1955, Ruth Ellis went to the Magdala pub in Hampstead, London. She knew that Blakely was there, and she wanted to see him. Their relationship had been breaking apart for some time, and both of them had been dealing with anger, jealousy, and sadness. When Blakely walked outside the pub, Ruth took out a gun that she had with her and fired several shots at him. The shooting happened in front of witnesses, and Blakely died almost right away. Instead of running, Ruth waited calmly for the police to arrive. When officers reached the scene, she admitted that she was the person who had shot him. Her admission made the case straightforward for investigators and the courts, and everyone knew the trial would move quickly. In June 1955, Ruth stood trial at the Old Bailey, one of London's most well-known courts. The trial was very short because she told the court exactly what she had done. The jury found her guilty of murder, and the judge gave her the punishment required by the law at that time: death by hanging. On 13 July 1955, she was executed at Holloway Prison. Her death shocked many people across the country. Over time, more people began to ask whether her punishment had been fair, especially as society learned more about harmful and abusive relationships. Her case became one of the key moments that changed the way people in the UK felt about the death penalty. Even today, her grandchildren continue to ask the government to give her a posthumous pardon, saying that modern understanding of emotional abuse should be considered when looking back at her story. Case 16. Charlotte Newton. Everything began in Hull, England, in April 2022. Charlotte worked as a street sex worker, and news reports said she had struggled with drug use for many years. These struggles made life very hard for her. She also went through painful relationships that made her feel unsafe and unstable. Because of all these problems, her life moved from place to place with little comfort. On the day of the crime, she met a 74-year-old man who had paid her before. He trusted her because he already knew her, and he agreed to meet her again. But what happened during this meeting became a very serious moment that soon brought the police into the situation. According to what was shared in court, Charlotte took the man to a quiet spot. Once they were alone, she suddenly pulled out a knife. She held the knife toward him to scare him and demanded money. The man, who was much older and not strong enough to protect himself, became very frightened. To keep himself safe, he gave her the money he had. Reports said she took £110 and a mobile phone before leaving. After she ran off, the man felt shaken and worried. Police officers later talked to him and gathered information from others who saw Charlotte nearby. These details helped them identify her as the person who carried out the robbery. Officers soon found her, arrested her, and brought her into custody, so the case could move directly to court. When the case reached Hull Crown Court, prosecutors described exactly how Charlotte used the knife to threaten the man. They said the victim thought they were meeting in a normal way and had no idea he would be scared like that. The court also listened to information about Charlotte's long history of drug problems and the very difficult life she lived. Her lawyer explained that these issues affected her choices and made her life very unstable. Even so, the judge said that using a knife to scare an elderly man was a serious act that caused real harm. Because of this, Charlotte was given 7 years in prison. Case 17. Leanne Potter-Williamson's name became known in the United Kingdom after a cyber blackmail case brought to Cambridge Crown Court in November 2025. Reports explained that she worked as a sex worker who advertised on an adult website, and she ran the online account together with her husband, Daniel Williamson. The page looked simple, almost like any other profile used to speak with potential clients. Men would send messages, ask questions, and try to set up meetings. But while these messages arrived every day, something very different was happening in the background. A plan was forming quietly, and this plan would later place both Leanne and Daniel in very serious legal trouble. Here is where the story grows deeper, so stay with this part. Instead of using the messages to meet anyone, the couple kept the private chats that men sent to the escort profile. Court reports explained that Leanne and Daniel saved screenshots, copied personal details, and stored chat logs from the men who contacted the account. After keeping the information, they reached out to the same men again. This time, the messages were not friendly. According to investigators, the men were told to send money or the couple would contact their families, friends, or workplaces and say they had spoken to an adult services profile. Many of the victims were very scared, worrying about their marriages, their children, or the jobs they might lose. The threats did not stop. From August 2023 to January 2024, more messages were sent, more payments were demanded, and the fear continued to grow. By the time the case reached Cambridge Crown Court, investigators had gathered a large amount of evidence. They collected bank transfers showing where the money went. They looked at saved chat messages, screenshots, and files that showed how the threats were made. Every new piece of evidence added to the story confirmed the pattern of blackmail. When the couple appeared in court, both Leanne Potter-Williamson and Daniel Williamson pleaded guilty to several counts of blackmail. Daniel admitted to 10 counts, and Leanne admitted to 3 counts, all connected to these repeated threats. The judge said that the couple caused real fear and used private online contact in a harmful way. In November 2025, the sentencing took place. Leanne received 3 years and 1 month in prison, and Daniel received 7 years and 4 months, bringing the long investigation and digital blackmail scheme to an end. Case 18. Donna Asutaitis' case became one of the most talked about money-related crime stories in London. She worked as a very expensive escort, and the Telegraph reported that she could earn up to £1,000 for a single night with one client. Many of the men who paid her gave her cash, which meant there were no easy records showing exactly how much she earned. Some news reports also said she enjoyed fancy gifts and lived in a way that looked very rich. None of this was against the law. Working as an escort was not the reason she got into trouble. The real problem began when the government office in charge of taxes called HM Revenue and Customs, or HMRC, noticed that Donna's lifestyle looked too expensive compared to the small amount of money she reported as her official income. That made them wonder where the rest of the money came from. HMRC started looking more closely at how Donna earned and spent her money. They checked bank statements, financial paperwork, and even spoke to people who knew about the money she made. After carefully going through the information, investigators found that Donna had not reported around £120,000 that she was supposed to pay tax on. Reports from Accounting Web and Contractor Weekly said that during the years 2005 to 2007, Donna's total earnings were actually much higher, over £300,000, but the tax charges focused on the part she hid from the government. This case was not about someone getting hurt, and it did not involve violence. It was about being honest. In the United Kingdom, everyone who earns money must tell the government how much they make so that taxes can be collected properly. When someone hides their earnings, it becomes a serious crime, and HMRC can take action. That is exactly what happened here. In July 2012, Donna went to a Crown Court in London, which is where serious cases are heard. The Telegraph confirmed that prosecutors presented clear evidence showing how she earned large amounts of money, spent freely, and still reported very little income. In court, Donna admitted that she did not declare everything she earned. The judge told her that tax evasion is a serious matter because the money collected from taxes helps pay for schools, hospitals, roads, and many other important services. Since she broke the rules for a long time, the judge decided she needed to go to prison as punishment. Different news stories gave slightly different details about the exact length of her sentence, but they all agreed on one thing: she received a custodial sentence. Case 19. Maline Leuen's name became known across Australia after a very sad event that happened during a private session in a hotel room. She worked as a sex worker who offered special bondage services to clients who asked for them. On August 12, 2020, she met a man named Anthony Brady at a hotel in Cairns, Queensland. They planned a session where restraints would be used. ABC News reported that during this meeting, his arms and legs were tied, a hood was placed over his head, and a gag sat near his mouth. At first, Leuen told police that everything seemed normal and that the session was going as expected. But things changed very quickly when Brady stopped moving and stopped answering her. She tried to get help right away, but even though emergency workers came as fast as they could, they were not able to bring him back. The court needed to understand exactly what happened inside that hotel room. During the trial, the court heard that the gag may have blocked Brady's breathing. Experts also explained that Leuen did not check carefully enough to make sure he could breathe the whole time. Forensic specialists told the jury that his airway had been restricted and that he likely died because he could not get enough air. Text messages and CCTV footage were also shown in court to help explain the timeline. Prosecutors argued that Leuen should have watched him more closely because sessions like these require constant care. The jury listened to every detail, and after thinking about all the evidence, they decided that Leuen was guilty of manslaughter for acting in a way that was not safe during the session. When the case reached the sentencing stage in September 2022, the judge explained the decision in clear terms. The court ruled that Leuen was responsible for Brady's death because she did not take the proper steps to keep him safe. According to ABC News, she received a sentence of 6.5 years in prison. Case 20. Crystal Bastien. Many people in Ottawa knew her name because of a plan she created that ended in a very sad and deadly way. Local reports described her as a sex trade worker who spent many years working on the streets and trying to save the money she earned. Her life was difficult, and she often dealt with unsafe people and stressful situations. By 2018, Crystal believed that her pimp, a man named Mohammed Mana, had taken a very large amount of her savings. This made her feel upset and worried, and she wanted the money returned. Because of this, she decided to set up a meeting with him. She thought she could bring him somewhere and have other people help her get the money back. But the choice she made that day led to a chain of events she could not control. In 2018, Crystal arranged for Mana to meet her at a hotel on Walkley Road. She told him to come there, and she also asked several men she knew to be present inside the room. Her plan, based on information shared in court, was for these men to pressure Mana so he would return the money she believed he had taken. She wanted the meeting to be forceful, but she did not plan for anyone to lose their life. However, once Mana stepped inside the hotel room, everything changed very quickly. Instead of a short confrontation, the men attacked him. They beat him, tied him up with ropes, and strangled him. Mana did not survive. When police officers later examined the room, checked phone messages, and reviewed how everyone moved that day, they discovered the role Crystal played in setting everything up. The case soon spread across Ottawa, with many people shocked by how a plan about money turned into a deadly event. Crystal was first charged with first-degree murder because she arranged the meeting and brought Mana into the room where he was attacked. But as the case continued, prosecutors reviewed all the details and agreed to accept a plea to manslaughter instead. This meant the court recognized that she was part of the plan even if she did not carry out the fatal acts herself. In 2022, Crystal stood before a judge for sentencing. The judge gave her 5.5 years in prison for her part in the killing. Case 21. Renee Elizabeth Tarbuk's case happened on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. News reports described Renee as an escort, and some stories said she had also worked in the modeling world earlier in her life. She lived in a nice home, but keeping up with her mortgage and everyday bills became harder and harder. As time passed, money became a bigger problem for her. She also began using drugs, which made her life even more stressful and confusing. Because she struggled to pay her bills, Renee started selling dangerous drugs to bring in more income. At first, she may have believed it would help her stay ahead, but it soon became something much bigger than she expected. Police learned that Renee was supplying methamphetamine, also called ice, along with other harmful drugs. They discovered that she was earning money from both her escort work and her drug dealing. Messages and phone records showed that she had been selling drugs to different people for some time. Detectives slowly gathered information by studying who she talked to, how often she met with buyers, and what she was passing along. All of these small pieces helped police build a clear picture of what she was doing. Once they had enough evidence, they arrested Renee and charged her with drug trafficking. Reports said that she admitted what she had done when she went to court. In 2016, Renee appeared in a Queensland courtroom to answer for her actions. Prosecutors explained that she was selling dangerous drugs to help pay for her lifestyle and to try to keep up with her home payments. They said her actions were repeated over time, not just a single mistake. Her lawyer shared details about her personal life, including her money troubles, the pressures she felt, and how stress pushed her toward bad decisions. The judge listened to everything but made it clear that selling dangerous drugs was too serious to ignore. Because of this, Renee was given a custodial prison sentence. Public reports did not show the exact number of years, but it was clear that the judge wanted her to spend enough time in prison to understand the seriousness of her actions. If you enjoyed watching this video, please subscribe to my channel. I post interesting true crime documentaries on the channel every day. Thanks for watching.